This is the Senior University Session, Information Literacy for Lifelong Learners. The presenter is Nicholas Casas. Nico Casas first joined Indiana University Northwest in 2017 as a visiting librarian in the role of coordinator of library instruction. He is now assistant librarian for teaching and learning and works with a team of other librarians to deliver instruction sessions for classes throughout campus with an emphasis on information literacy. Nico previously worked as a reference librarian at Morton College in Cicero, Illinois, and as a project coordinator at the Center for Research Libraries in Chicago, Illinois. He earned his Master of Library and Information Science from Dominican University and his Bachelor of Music Education from St. Xavier University. His research interests include fake news and misinformation. Welcome, Nico. We're glad to have you with us today.
Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining me on this really steamy, humid Friday morning, and happy Friday to everyone. I am currently broadcasting from my office in Gary at the John W. Anderson Library at IU Northwest. So the Center for Urban and Regional Excellence has asked me to do one of the programs for Senior University. And I'm really thrilled to be doing this, especially contacting with our community members and with our elders. So this is really great. If those who may not remember me, I don't know if there was anyone from last year's program, but I did a program on information literacy and fake news and misinformation last year before the 2020 election. And we kind of dived into how to protect yourself by finding great information on the candidates, whether it be the top ballot candidates or down ballot candidates, before you go out and vote. So this presentation is going to be a little bit similar to that, but this time we're going to have a slight focus on the COVID-19 pandemic and anti-vaccine movements. So this is going to be a little bit of history, but this is also going to be hands-on techniques that you will be able to use right after we are done here in this session. So it's kind of a little bit of mixture of both. So what I will do is I'm going to share my screen. Basically, it's going to be pretty similar to what we did last time. So a little bit of our goals are what we'll be talking about today is I'll be going over for some terminology with everyone. And this is really important because I want to talk about different terms you might hear on a local newscast or something you might hear like on the radio or just on social media. And I want to kind of lay out different terms that's in relation to quote unquote fake news and what that is. And then we will go into a short history of fake news and on how within the modern history that kind of goes all the way back from the printing press. And then we'll go into current practices on what's happening right now in the 21st century. And then I will go into the Sift method, which is a really nice hands-on technique, and it's pretty easy to remember on when you come across a piece of information on what you can do to, you can use this Sift method to see if it's true or not. And then I will go into fact-checking websites. I'll show you my recommendations on what I like and a lot of other experts like doing. And then we'll go into exercises. 3 examples I will show you on the screen on 3 different examples that you might run into with fake news. So we'll be taking a look at comparing and contrasting 2 articles, and then we'll be looking at a meme, which is basically like essentially like a picture that kind of shows that kind of spreads information. And then I'll show you on how to research and read laterally behind an author. and how you would be able to do that, whether it be an author or a person who claims to be an expert. So I am one of the, just to kind of give a little bit more background about myself. I am a librarian here at Indiana University Northwest, like Tashina said, and I do a lot of work with misinformation and disinformation campaigns and with fake news. That's what a lot of my research is based on. And what I also do is I teach students here on campus on how to, these are basically the same techniques we'll be talking here that the same techniques I teach to the students here at the undergraduate level and the graduate level. So this is kind of a condensed 1 hour version of what I kind of help out with students in terms of that. So I run the library instruction program. So me and a team of librarians, what we do is we go into classrooms and classes and not only teach students about how to use the library, but how to identify research and resources they can use for different projects that they have throughout their classes. So whether it be like a final paper or a presentation, so we go into those and we assist those students that way. So okay, so first thing I want to kind of go into is a little bit of the terminology. So there are 4 terms that I want to kind of go into. So so for fake news, I don't like using the term fake news. I'm trying to my best using it out of my vocabulary because it's kind of meaningless right now. For false information, anything could be fake news, and anybody. It's come to the point where if someone disagrees with something, they call it fake news, and that really it really ends up losing its meaning. So instead, I'd like to use the term misinformation. Or if you want to kind of get to more specific, disinformation and malinformation. So as you can see here, these 3 terms are similar, but they also kind of have different similar has a variety of similarities. So you might hear on the radio or on the news misinformation, and that's usually used a lot. So misinformation is spreading false information whether you want to do it or not. So if you're not intending on spreading false information. So let's say if you come upon like a news story and it ends up being not true or ends up being fake, but you think it's real. You may think it's real, and so what you do is you share it and you spread it around. That would be misinformation. That there is no intention on you spreading it. That you think it's true. Disinformation is the evil version, is the version that is meant to cause harm, and that is you spreading false information intentionally that you want to do it, that it's false content and it's fabricated and it's manipulated. So that's disinformation. And then malinformation is causing harm. So that would be like leaking, that would maybe being doing with hate speech. So that's a little bit more active, and that's kind of like the one that's the most harmful. But really, you can use a lot of the media talk about misinformation campaigns when the person is duped, where they're not intending on spreading misinformation. And then disinformation are like active campaigns done by people with like a political purpose, or people who or even like countries that are spreading bad information in order to kind of tilt a population a certain way. I'll kind of give a quick history of misinformation. So you might have heard of something called yellow journalism. And yellow journalism is kind of goes back all the way to the late 19th century, when we are starting to see literacy rates among common people are just rising and rising and rising, and therefore newspapers is where everyone is getting their journal their information from. So it was the yellow journalism, the kind of the yellow press war was, someone might remember, it's by the 2 newspapermen, Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst. and they were kind of competing with their major newspapers to spread misinformation around with kind of, I guess you would say, the modern version of like elite media. So they would kind of tilt kind of campaigns, and it even got to the point where in the late 19th century, with the Spanish-American War, especially when it comes to with William Randolph Hearst, kind of lit the fire with the Spanish-American War by spreading misinformation, actually using disinformation to spread about about the Spanish. That kind of created that short conflict with the short war. So as we kind of go through we kind of see with the 20th century, there comes with tabloids, and there's even satire that resembles like newspapers. So you might see things such as like News of the World or National Enquirer. We see that becomes like extremely popular on newsstands throughout the 1980s and the 1990s. And that practices continues on with social media as well, in the form, just in the form of satire. So with today, information has become, I argue, and a lot of other researchers argue, is that information has become like a commodity, just as important as money or as oil. I did read somewhere recently that World War III, if there is going to be like another massive war on a massive scale, it's not going to be fought on land, but it's going to be fought online, in terms of leaking out with information or attacking cybersecurity centers, and a lot of other unimaginable things that I don't like personally thinking about. So, but information has become extremely valuable, and it could also be used as and political propaganda has become really useful as well, for not only like with the United States, but with foreign countries as well. You have like countries such as here as the United States, and also with like the Russian Federation and China, swaying swaying elections by using political propaganda to kind of go their way, as how they participate in the world stage. One major example that kind of came out before the 2016 United States presidential election was the Internet Research Agency, which is the IRA, that is based in Russia. And the IRA was a fake news, I'm sorry, not fake news, but a disinformation campaign that operated like a factory, where you had Russian agents who were posing as Americans in major social media sites such as Facebook and Twitter. And what they were doing is they were posing as Americans and holding political rallies. They were spreading disinformation. They were doing all of this, and eventually it got to regular, ordinary American citizens, and that spread it out even more. And it doesn't it really helps out with in terms of the digital divide. Not only when we talk about the digital divide, we talk about access to the internet, and access to cell phones, and access to like a decent internet connection to use it. But it also, in terms of digital divide, in terms of information literacy and digital literacy. So you have access to the internet, you have access to social media, but do you know how to use it responsibly, and do you know how to use it safely? And not a lot of people have that digital literacy, which we will talk about today, actually, in this program. But do people know how to read between the lines? Do people know how to read laterally when they're looking at a news story? Do people know how to be skeptical when they're looking at something? And so a lot of that was spread with that way. Now, recently, a report from the Center of Countering Digital Hate, which is out of the United Kingdom, by a group of researchers, what they came out with a recent report, and it's a really fascinating report. I will send out the link to everyone on a resource list of this report, but it's a pretty short report, and it's really well written. It's pretty easy to read, but in terms of with the COVID-19 vaccine, whether or not I'm not here to really lecture about whether or not you should take it or not. I'm a big believer in personal responsibility. And I'm sorry, not personal, but not necessarily personal responsibility, but personal choice. But I am against people who are spreading misinformation about the vaccine itself, and because it doesn't allow people to make their choice between themselves and their doctor. So, and what happened in this report is that they scoured the internet between February and March of this year of 2021. And this is when the vaccine was starting to roll out outside of medical providers, and it became slowly accessible to regular lay people, to non-medical professionals, where the general population was going to be getting it in the United States. And they scoured all of this information in Twitter and in Facebook. And what they found is that just 12 people, 12 individuals are responsible for 65% of anti-vaccine disinformation on all social media platforms, which is including Facebook, which includes Twitter, Instagram, all of this, and only 12 people are responsible for it, which is pretty extraordinary, which is pretty amazing. So, and these include people who I had to research a little bit about, but I've only known a couple, but these names, which includes like Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who was RFK's nephew, Dr. Joseph Mercola of Chicago, who promotes alternative medicine, and then also Ty and Charlene Bollinger. You may or may not have seen their Facebook page, The Truth About Cancer. They've written also a book with that same title as well, but it's an extremely popular Facebook page that gets a lot of views, gets a lot of likes and everything. And these 12 individuals are responsible for that. So, this harms a lot of people, and this is responsible for having people not making a sound decision based between what they think, based between what an individual thinks and what their doctor thinks. So getting the vaccine should be a decision between those two parties, and not something that you might read on the internet, that you might read on social media. Okay, so here's our first break. Does anybody have any questions so far?
We do have a comment in the chat from Kate. She says, I love the work of the News Literacy Project.
Oh, so do I, Kate. That's a great project. That's a fantastic project. So the News Literacy Project, for those who don't know, but it's a non-for-profit campaign that educates educators. So the News Literacy Project, what they do is they send out, they have a bunch of different lesson plans, a bunch of different examples that's used in modern news. And they have a newsletter that's a great email called the Sift. And it teaches you on how to spot misinformation using real world things that you would see on the web and that you would see on social media. So I do love that. Thank you so much for pointing out that project. So it's absolutely fantastic. And I see in the chat as well that Kate mentions anyone can use their Checkology site to hone their skills. Yeah, that Checkology site is really fantastic. It's really great. We'll be using very similar techniques to what the News Literacy Project talks about in this presentation. So we'll be kind of going through that a little bit, talking about the same pretty similar techniques. They promote the idea of looking into things laterally and reading through laterally. So kind of reading between the lines and not just like reading what the news story says, but trying to find the and kind of studying the author, studying the person who created the information, and just being skeptical and just kind of seeing whether or not that you buy what they're selling or not. So what I want to do is I want to kind of go into the actual meat and potatoes of this presentation and kind of teach you about how to use the Sift method. And the Sift method was created by a digital literacy researcher named Mike Caulfield. and he is out of Washington State University on Vancouver Island. And his blog, and I've also put his blog on the Sift Method on a resource document that you all will receive. But this is I consider myself a little bit of a disciple of Mike Caulfield, because just because I believe that this method is simple to use and it's tried and true, which is pretty rare for a lot of these types of with a lot of these types of like step-by-step methods. So it's really difficult to put something as complex and something that requires a lot of steps and a lot of back and forth, and puts it so succinctly into the Sift method. So we'll go into exactly what that is. So Sift is an acronym that stands for, so the S stands for stop, I stands for investigate the source, F is for find better coverage, and T is trace back to the original source. What Mike Caulfield argues is, what he explains is that when you come up upon something such as a resource, so if you find if you come up upon something that's on the internet, whether it be a meme or a news story or a rumor that kind of goes around, you can use the Sift method, and you can use it in order, SIFT, and you would be able to kind of determine whether or not it's true and whether or not you can whether or not that it's sound information. You don't have to, also, as we kind of go through this, you don't have to, you can kind of go not out of order, you can go in order, but you can, as you kind of go through SIFT, you can go from T, trace back to the original source, back to I, and then you can do F and T again, and you can do it as many times as you want. And he encourages you to repeat the pattern over and over again. So I will kind of go through what each letter means and how you'd be able to go about doing this. And then after that, I'll go through my 3 examples. So the first one is, in my opinion, the most important one and my favorite one, which is stop. So it's easy. It's really easy for anyone, of people from all ages. I see it from ages from toddlers all the way to the elderly. It's really easy, and it's a lot of fun to kind of just scroll through our devices, scroll through our cell phones, or go through like a social media app, and just kind of scrolling mindlessly through everything, and seeing different types of pictures or different types of memes. And it's really easy to get lost and lose track of time to doing that. The first one with stop is, to stop and actually to be present and see, and telling yourself, well, what am I doing here? Am I actively looking for something? Am I actively looking for information? Or am I just like reading social media just to have fun and digest it? You want to actually pay attention to what you are reading, and be more mindful of it. Not only will you save yourself some time, and not just sit on a social media account all day, but it will also give you that attitude of being skeptical and not believing everything you read, and not believing everything that everything on the internet is not necessarily true. So yes, and Kate, I see in the chat, she says, stop if you have a strong emotional reaction to the content. There is an example that kind of goes through that we'll talk about. So, but yeah, just being mindful, and if you have such a strong reaction to something, see why you are angry, and see why you have a strong reaction to it, and kind of pay attention to that, and don't let your emotions get to you. Let's see. There we go. So I is for investigating the source. So this may not always be so obvious, especially when we're digesting social media content at such a fast pace. So you want to look at the author, the person's name, or look at the website's organization, and identify that. Identify who actually wrote this. Is there an author's name attached to it? is there a website's organization? Maybe you want to pay attention to what is the name of the Facebook page that you're looking at. You want to identify it, but not only just identify it, but you want to investigate it and see what other websites are saying about this this particular page. And you can use fact-checking websites, which I'll go into if needed. So a lot of fact-checking websites take a look at the website's organization, and they take a look at the author, and they tell you whether or not they have a reputation on spreading misinformation and participating in disinformation campaigns. And that will kind of give you a clue. You can do that with a simple Google search, or you can do that with a Wikipedia technique that I will show you, and I will tell you what that is. And these are examples of really popular fact-checking websites that are really great. So there's factcheck.org. Snopes is really good. Snopes is pretty active in terms of, and it could be overwhelming with Snopes because they're always on top of new and current disinformation campaigns and rumor campaigns. There is at McGill University in Montreal, there is the Office for Science and Society that what they do is they and they have a great tagline, separating sense from nonsense. They have a whole research division on studying misinformation, and they do call out websites. And then there's PolitiFact, which is a that's based to use on political disinformation campaigns. And what they will do is they specialize in especially with American politics as well. Wikipedia, for those who don't know what Wikipedia is a free online encyclopedia. And Wikipedia is it's got a little bit of a bad reputation because it is content that is user driven and user written, especially from users that may remain anonymous, and it does have a little bit of a bent to it. So anyone can create or edit a Wikipedia article, but Wikipedia has gotten a lot more sophisticated than in years past. I use Wikipedia regularly for my personal research, and I also encourage students to use Wikipedia on their research as well, because it's not, back then it was there was a lot of vandalism would go on, and a lot of just fake topics, fake facts and trivia facts and everything like that would belong on Wikipedia. But there is a higher rigorous standard now for users and for editors as well. So it's gotten a lot more sophisticated. And there is a technique where you can use Wikipedia to investigate an author or investigate a website organization. It works really well with Google. Is anyone here, and you could say this in the chat or you can say it as aloud, does anybody have any familiarity, or has anyone ever used Wikipedia as well? Whether it be into their day-to-day lives or anything. The URL for Wikipedia is wikipedia.org, and it's comes in all types of different languages, and it's a really pretty amazing website. So we have one person that says yes. So I use it for I use it quite a bit actually, and I've used it with students in terms of having them create their own Wikipedia articles and editing articles. So it's a really interesting exercise when you learn more about it. And I'll go into later on how you can use it to investigate the sources of things. So back to our Sift method. So we have S for stop, I for investigate the source. F is find better coverage. So you want to compare the source. So you stumble upon something from like a Facebook page or a website, and you want to compare the source to trusted news and reporting outlets. So a lot of see what they see in terms of compared with what other news outlets are saying. So if it's sometimes if you find something that's longer and more in depth, that's a really great thing. What a lot of websites that participate in disinformation campaigns, and I'll show you how they do this, is they will take a snippet of an article, like a news article, and they won't tell the whole story. And so what they will do is they will do a snippet of it in order to match their political agenda, so match what they agree with. And so sometimes they might take it from a more mainstream news outlet, such as like Reuters or BBC or something like that. And what they will do is they will kind of cut that and just use it towards that. So sometimes if you find the longer version of an article, a longer version of something, don't be afraid if you don't agree with it. Maybe you might disagree with it, but at least you found that you found the right way for the right part where the information first landed. And then T, trace back to the original source. Context is everything. Context is extremely important when you come from that. So once you do find better coverage, you want to kind of trace it back to the original source. What a lot of a lot of disinformation campaigns, like websites that recycle content over and over again, and even mainstream websites recycle content over and over again. So sometimes a lot of the same news stories will point to an original source, might be like a study, or it might be a report, for example. Now, at the beginning of the presentation, I talked about that report about the Disinformation Dozen, which is the 12 people that are responsible for anti-vaccine content. A lot of mainstream reporters, a lot of mainstream websites such as like NPR or NBC, BBC, even a lot of left and right wing sources, they all talked about this Disinformation Dozen, but the original source came from the Center for Combating Digital Hate, and that is the original source on where the report was coming from. So it could be clipped from like a longer video or a longer story. A lot of disinformation campaigns, they like doing that, where they only like to showing light on one part of the story. But they like to show it to pursue their political agenda. Are there any questions?
Hi, Nico. One participant has a few comments. First, when she was in college, they were taught to only use information from certain sources, such as the New York Times, Washington Post, and PBS, because they do their fact finding. And she is curious as to know why we have moved away from that. Second, she comments that she stays away from social media because she finds some of the content seems to be ludicrous, and also that she knows that some people are being paid to write these things.
I think that's a wonderful comment. There's like a whole myriad of things on reason why it's gotten so bad, and so to kind of address your first point, is that mainstream news outlets, like you were talking about, such as especially with like PBS, they have whole teams of and they also have journalistic standards that they uphold to in order to have to do reporting. There's journalism ethics that I only know a little bit about the surface about, because I'm not a journalist, I'm a librarian, but they do have certain standards. And then there are bad actors that don't follow that standards. They're bad actors who do that. What we want to the thing that I want to point out to, is that I point out to students a lot, is that and you mentioned this as well, Marion, is that people who get paid to that you may have heard people who get paid to write fake news. That is real. That is true. That is absolutely true, because there is money to be made in misinformation. There is, and that's because of a lot of it has to do with our technology on how clicks equal money. So when you click on something and it has a lot of ads on it, and it brings in ad revenue, and add traffic to that person who is responsible for that website. And they make money off of fake news. And it's because of a lot of it has to do with advertisers on who they're selling advertisements to. And a lot of it has to do with just making money, generating clicks. And when you have something that's like juicy content or something, or even something that validates your own beliefs, you're going to want to stay into what we call like your echo chamber, which is kind of like your own version of the truth within your world. So you kind of stay within that world of kind of validating how you're feeling, validating like your beliefs, instead of challenging your beliefs and instead of challenging what other people, what the other side says, because it's comforting to you. But yeah, it is money to be made, and information literacy has gotten kind of off the rails, and why I try to go into teaching students on how to kind of read between the lines and read and to do it. So it's really it's really challenging. It's really difficult. So and especially right now, since like Kate addressed, is that since a lot of newspaper, that content has moved largely online, as for the most part online. So what newspapers are trying to do is and I know the Chicago Tribune has done this recently when they moved their editorial section from the front part of the newspaper to a little bit further towards the back, is because people need to know the difference between fact and opinion, and a lot of people can't really tell that difference. Facts are, this is laid out what happened. Opinion is, well, this is what I think that happened. This is what I believe, and this is my commentary on what is happening. And that's not the same as facts. That just might be someone's belief or someone's feelings, but that's not the same. And that gets blurred a lot when you're talking about mainstream cable news outlets such as like Fox News or MSNBC, a little bit with CNN. So you want to kind of determine and know the difference between fact and opinion, and that's a really important distinction to make. So it is really hard out there, and it's getting harder and harder to get rid of that blur. We're going to go on to the examples that I have showed you, and I have 3 examples. And these are examples that I use with my students that I'll show you as well. So what I will do is I will show you a couple of images. And then what I will do is I will share my web browser on what you can do when you come across something, what I tell my students to do on the web using just simple Google searches. Okay, so here is the first example that I want to show you. So, and it has to do with the I part, which is investigating the source. So we have 2 articles, and I show my students these articles. And what they do is they have them up on their computers when we're doing like a workshop like this. And there are 2 articles. So the article on the left is called "Children Are Not Super Spreaders of COVID-19," and the one on the right is an article with a question: can children get COVID-19? And so what I tell them is, do I investigate the source? So see who the author is, and kind of pay attention to what the organization is and what it's about. And I have students do Google searches, and then I also have them use Wikipedia to tell them give them examples of background reading about this. So the first thing is you want to take a look at, as you can see with the article. So if you can see the author, here's the first article that you have here. So you can see at the top, it says American College of Pediatricians. And then you have it as you go down here, you see the author. So according to this, this is an author, Michelle Cretella, and MD. So she's a medical doctor as well. So you want to kind of investigate this and kind of take a look at what this, so they've identified it. So students would identify the organization and they would identify the author. And then here's the other article. And this was written by Sean O'Leary, MD, who is who is also a medical doctor with a couple of other degrees as well with that. So, and you see the website, it's called healthychildren.org. So what I do is, I have students Google or in Wikipedia take a look at to see what these organizations are about. So let's do the first one. So let's do healthychildren.org. So what I will do is I will go to Google and I will go to healthychildren.org, and then I will do Wikipedia. So Healthy Children, as you can see, it brings up this first result. And actually, these first two results are actually pretty good so far. So it looks like Healthy Children is an online magazine published by the American Academy of Pediatrics. So that actually brings up more questions. Who is the American Academy of Pediatrics? So it's an online magazine published by them. And as you can see down here, it goes into the AAP, which is the American Academy of Pediatrics, according to Wikipedia. So what I want to do next is you can click on the Wikipedia article about the organization behind Healthy Children, or what you can do is you can just type that into Google. So American Academy of Pediatrics, Wikipedia. And then as you can see here, it's given kind of the information about it over here. So, and you can click on Wikipedia. So as you can see, and you can just kind of read just like the first part. So it's an American Professional Association of Pediatricians. So doctors who specialize in children, and it's headquartered in Illinois. And it's got about 67, and you can see here in this red and this information box, it's got a lot of really interesting information here, such as their membership. It's got 67,000 people who are members, and the president is a doctor, is a medical doctor, and it's got a staff about 390 people. So this is a really large organization, and it's the Professional Association for Pediatricians. A lot of major occupations have their professional organizations. For librarians, we have a few. We have like the American Library Association. You have like a bunch of other different organizations for different specialty, with doctors, with lawyers. So that's usually kind of like our head honcho organization when you talk about that. So that's what this Healthy Children is run by the, and you could see that here, the American Academy of Pediatrics. So that would tell me, that's really legit. That's a really legit organization. Then you're going to take a look at this one. So the American College of Pediatricians. So who are these people? Who is this organization? So what I will do is I will go back to Google. And then this time I'm going to do the American College of Pediatricians. And then I will do Wikipedia. So, and it brings me up to here on the American Academy of Pediatricians. So on this Wikipedia page. So it's also called ACPEDS. And this says it's a socially conservative advocacy group of pediatricians and other healthcare professionals in the United States. So the group was founded only in 2002. And it says the group's primary focus is advocating against abortion and the adoption of children by gay or lesbian people. It also advocates for conversion therapy. So, and it says it continues on with the American Academy of Pediatrics, and it holds, and it's actually been listed as a hate group by the Southern Poverty Law Center as pushing anti-LGBT junk science. So the Southern Poverty Law Center is a huge legitimate. It's a huge organization. It's a legitimate organization that calls out hate from groups such as the Nation of Islam, to the Ku Klux Klan, to other far right, far left groups. And so actually this American College of Pediatricians, it's a hate group. And as you can see here on the right-hand side, you see in this right box, it was only founded in 2002, 19 years ago, as opposed to this organization, which was founded 91 years ago in 1930. And it's only got 500 members, which is pretty low compared to 67,000 thousand membership count. And these are the founders, and they're not medical doctors. They don't have any medical training or anything whatsoever. Otherwise, they would have put that on here, and you can see that on here. So you can either get this information from a couple of ways. You can do, a lot of websites have an About Us section. You want to be very skeptical about that. Mike Caulfield, the person who came up with Sift, he says that you want to be really wary about when you look at the About Us section of websites. He calls these self-referential sources. So if they write about, they write their own About Us, it might have a bias to what they really are. Wikipedia acts as a neutral ground when it comes to that. So when I have students ask them, so I ask them, okay, between the two articles, which one would you pick to use for your research, and which one would you pick to use just in everyday life? And they obviously would pick this healthychildren.org.
Nico, we do have a comment in the chat. She says that foundation has been around for 91 years to help the American Academy of Pediatrics, but she also says that it's interesting how the ACP site looks so much more professional than the AAP. And I think a lot of us would take into consideration how a site would look and then automatically judge on whether it's valid or not. Do you have any talking points about that?
Oh, you're exactly right. Yeah, that's a wonderful observation. That's great. It does, and you never want to judge a book by its cover. That's the old-fashioned way of looking at it. Just because something might look more legit does not necessarily kind of make it legit. So yeah, I kind of agree, and no one's actually pointed out that observation to me before, that the ACP site looks more professional. And it looks cleaner than the AAP website. That is really interesting, and that's something I think I will use with my students as well, because it does look different. But you never want to judge a book on its cover, and you can use Wikipedia and use Google and other fact-checking websites, not just Wikipedia, but other ones. And because a lot of that is a neutral ground to kind of smell out who are the bad actors and who are just passing along information from trusted sources. And yeah, it's the American Academy of Pediatrics has been around for a lot longer than the American College of Pediatricians. So yeah. Okay, so I want to go on to my next example. And this is an example of a meme you might see. So a meme is usually like an image that kind of goes viral all over the internet, and a meme is it's basically something that goes viral, and it's got a few other definitions. But here's an image that you might see on social media, and I want everyone to kind of take a look at that and take a hard look at it, and kind of also pay attention to how they're feeling. So this is an example. As you can see here, it's a big square, and it's an image. And squares are great because it's really easy to find them on Instagram, and it's really easy to find them on Twitter and social media and Facebook, because it's really compact, and it's used to generate kind of discussion, and it's to generate emotion. So to kind of describe what you're seeing on the screen, so you can see here, it says Harvard Medical School at the very top. And then it's got the Harvard shield that's on there as well. And then it says in big font, it says peer-reviewed study finds 70% of unprovoked domestic violence is by females, and then still think it's gendered. And then as you can see on the bottom, there is an image of a Black couple, and it's got a Black woman who is about to hurt the Black man with something. There's like an object in her hand. I can't even tell what it is. And then as you can see here, it's got this little tiny font above. You see peer reviewed. It's got source where the asterisk is at, the little star, and it's got this long URL. it's got this really super long URL. And then if you can see, I had a student point this out to me too, on the left-hand side, there's more URLs at the left-hand side from someone called Philip S. Hunt. It's got their website, and it's also got their Facebook page on where this is actually supposed to be where the meme is originally from, and this person wants credit for this meme, because what does it do? It generates views, it generates clicks to that website, and that person who owns that website will make money from it. So what you do is, so what I do is I've had my students, I have them, so how would you go about debunking this? How would you go about finding out if this statement is real or not? And so what we have is some students might say, well, I'll go to that URL and I'll type it in. Well, you can do that and it will probably take you to the study, but that's a lot to type in. And think about it. Do you really want to type in that whole URL? And most people will just move on. We'll look at the meme, see, oh, that's probably true, and then we'll move on to the next image. They'll move on to the next Facebook post. They're not going to type in that URL. They're not going to type in all of those letters and numbers into a web browser or into their phone, because it's crazy. It's really long. So what students will do is they will go into Google again, and they'll type in like Harvard Medical School, and then they'll do peer-reviewed study finds 70%. And then do like domestic violence. So we can do that right now in real time. So what I want to do is I want to go to, let's do Harvard Medical School, and then domestic.
Nico,
Yes.
we have a participant that would like to share an insight on the meme that we were just looking at. She says one issue is branding, specifically that Harvard doesn't use yellow in their branding. They use white and red.
Right. Great. That's a really great observation. That's really sleuth of you. That's really like Sherlock Holmes of you. That's really great. Right, because Harvard doesn't use that yellow. You're right. They don't exactly. So as you could see here is what I did. I searched into Google, and it's got all of these websites that have that kind of put, I guess you can say that you can kind of put their spin onto things. So you can see here, this is from something called newscastmedia.com. I don't know what that is. Reddit has an interesting reputation when it comes to misinformation and disinformation campaigns. That's another social media platform. And as you can see here, this is from the National Institute of Health. So this is coming from the US government, from a government website. That might be interesting. There's iFunny. And it's not until we come to down here, there is a forum here from Harvard, but there's this one here from health.harvard.edu. And what you can do is you can click on this one. And this is from, the reason why I picked this one is because it's got Harvard in harvard.edu, which takes you directly to the Harvard University website. And this is Harvard Health Publishing. So, and this is talking about with women's health. So, and as you can see here, this looks like it's an updated article on this. So understanding intimate partner violence. So, actually, I'm sorry, this is not the right one. But essentially what happens is that it takes you to this Harvard Medical website. And what Harvard does is they do digest versions of their studies. So instead of linking over to the actual like study that that a lot of people don't really want to read, so the peer-reviewed study, they'll take it over to their digest and they do a quick digest, a spin of it and everything like that. And then as you can see here is I can actually take you to this study. And the reason why I'm taking you to this actual study is, if you can see in the meme, it's got something called a DOI, which is a digital object identifier. And I want to show you what that looks like. Because it's really interesting to when you kind of look at. So when you look at this long URL, you see it says DOI, and it's got all these strings of letters, and as you can see, 079020, it actually leads to the study. When you plug that in, it matches the DOI to this one, 079020, and it goes into that. So, and it takes you to this article, differences in frequency of violence and reported injury between relationship reciprocal and non-reciprocal intimate partner violence. So what I asked my students is, I asked them, where did they get this 70% from? Why do they say it's 70%? And there is a handy trick. It's control find. So you can go on your keyboard and you can do control F. And then if you do that, you can hit 70 and it will take you to all the places. It'll highlight everything that's in 70. So as you kind of go, as you can see here, it highlights the 70% in the results section of the abstract. And so it's saying almost 24% of all relationships had some violence. And half, 49%, were those with reciprocally violent. In the non-reciprocal, though, women were more the perpetrators in more than 70% of the cases. So what this is saying, this is for non-reciprocally violent relationships. So this is something that's like not necessarily provoked. So, but the reciprocity was associated with more frequent violence among women, but not men. So essentially what this meme does, we're going to kind of go back into the image. So it does two things. So what it does is it takes only the tip of the iceberg of the study. It takes only a little bit of the study. And what it does is it advances their agenda, not notifying the reader saying that, but this is for not all of domestic violence cases. This is only for a small slice of violence cases. And the image is absolutely appalling because it follows that racist trope of an angry Black woman trope, and that's because she's got like a mean face and she's about to it looks like hit the man. And so that stirs your emotions, that stirs, especially for African American women, for Black women. How do you feel that this continued stereotype, this continued trope is still happening within this meme? And so what that does is that generates discussion, it generates comments, and look what happens. The person who created the meme will get all this clicks and they'll get all this popularity. So here's an example of, I was kind of going through the disinformation dozen that was kind of released, and one of the names that kind of perked my interest was this Dr. Joseph Mercola. And he is a medical doctor who is actually based in Chicago, who is still a practicing medical doctor. And this person is responsible for disinformation campaigns, 61 of the 12 of the disinformation dozen. So what I want to do is you want to kind of take a look at and be skeptical about their About Us section. So what I will do is go back to my web browser, and here is Dr. Mercola's main homepage. So as you can see here, there's a lot of articles that this website publishes. You have The Truth About COVID-19, which is a book that Dr. Mercola published, and it's got all of these articles as well. So this is what I mean about being a little bit skeptical about the About Us section. So you're going to kind of go to About Us. And as you can see here, it kind of goes into who Joseph Mercola is and everything. And then it's got all of his credentials, and he's an osteopathic physician. And it's got his state of Illinois license he's got here. And it's got all of his awards. So what you can do is, again, you want to kind of use the Wikipedia trick that we've been using with one of his awards. Here's an example. So Vision and Charity Award 2009, the National Vaccine Information Center. Personally, I've never heard of that organization before, so I want to kind of find more about it. What is the National Vaccine Information Center? So what I will do is I will, take a look, and I'll go to Google, and then I'll paste it here, and then I'll do, just add Wikipedia add that to it. And again, it takes you to the National Vaccine Information Center. And then as you can see here, it gives the National Vaccine Information Center. It tells, it's founded under the name Dissatisfied Parents Together, and it's from 1982. And it's an organization that's been criticized as a leading source of fear-mongering and misinformation about vaccines. So, and as you can see here, here's the information box that kind of gives you quick information. It's got the founded year, the founders, and look at here, funding. The funding is actually done by Joseph Mercola himself. So, and it's really interesting to see, oh, he won an award in 2009. Let's be skeptical about it. Like, why? Well, a lot of his funding comes from himself. So that's really interesting with that. And it kind of goes into his funding. Joseph Mercola provided $2.9 million between 2009 and 2018. Well, no wonder he won an award. Well, he donated a lot of money to it. So again, just be skeptical when you're kind of going through those things. And then Kate points out in the chat, wonder if he says Bill Gates is microchipping us. I know. Yeah, he might be spreading that misinformation and that rumor and everything like that. Okay, so this actually concludes my presentation. There is my contact information if anyone wants to contact, and then these are my references that I've used for this presentation. Are there any last minute questions or last minute comments about everything?
Yes, we have a request to review the list of fact-checking sites besides Wikipedia.
Let me go back to that slide where the fact-checking websites. This is a really great start so far. You make sure you don't want to have too many, because I mean, you could have too many, but you also, these are the ones that I know about and the ones that I can verify. There's a lot of them that have kind of sprung up to combat the real ones. So there's you might see them being disguised as like, this is a real fact-checking website, but you want to be really skeptical of that. But not everyone is comfortable using Wikipedia, and that's okay. You can use these other ones. Snopes seems to be the most popular one and the most mainstream one. And PolitiFact is really great when it comes to political issues and with political candidates.
We have another question. Is there a list of news sites that could be considered safe to listen to or to watch?
Not necessarily like a list. What you want to do is kind of investigate to see what other people are saying about that organization. There is a really interesting chart, the media bias chart. And so what it does is it kind of goes from super left-wing content to all the way more in the center, and then all the way to the right to more conservative, and it actually lists like major organizations on where they fall into the reporting. And it's actually really interesting to see who's in the center and who's the least biased. So let's take a look what I can do, and I can bring that up. And here's the chart that's right over here. So and it kind of goes into how they fit into the spectrum. So top and bottom is less reliable, and more up is more reliable. And then it goes from more extreme liberal all the way to very extreme conservative. And then it's really interesting to see what falls into the middle here. And I'd like to point out that you have, basic newswire systems such as AP and Reuters. They're right in the middle because all they are is just fact-based reporting. All they are is just right in the middle. Thank you so much for coming to my presentation. This concludes the presentation. So again, my name is Nico Casas. You can contact me at ncasas@iun.edu, or you can reach me by my telephone number, 219-980-6806. Thank you.